I'm wondering if where everyone participating tonight is, because we have like we are in the wet part of Australia, but who knows where other people come from and are joining us from. France, amazing. Love it. Bonsoir. Bonjour. That's actually morning over there. Perth. Yay. UK, wow. It's early there, isn't it? Melbourne, Byron Bay, Germany. Yay, I love it. Welcome, everyone.
Yeah, welcome, everyone.
In Pennsylvania as well. Yoo-hoo. We're covering most of Nice.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining us. Just a few housekeeping notes. Let's see. So that's roughly the agenda that we're going to be doing. Just to let you know that the session is recorded. So you can choose whether or not to be on screen or not.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. Quick introduction from ourselves. My name is Will Brown. So I'm one of the organizers of this meetup. I've been using WordPress for, well, since 2006, I think. So I'm mostly a WordPress developer. And for that, I kind of integrate WordPress into kind of bigger systems to use an automation like Zapier or Make, formerly Integromat, and things like that. And now I just help run this meetup. I help run the WordPress Sydney meetup as well. We might be looking to boot up the WooCommerce Sydney meetup if there's some interest of that. And I'm also Vice President of Linux Australia, which is the open source everything community in Australia. John is unfortunately not here today. He's one of the organizers as well. But I'll let Julia introduce herself.
Sure. I was answering to the message. Yes, we will make sure the recording is available after the presentation. So because it's 4 a.m. over there, just go back to sleep. So hello, everyone. I'm Julia. I'm Italian. I live in Sydney, and I'm a web designer. I work for a software company where we actually don't use WordPress at all. But I also have my own business on the side, which is called Web. It's a digital agency, and we do graphic design, web development, and digital marketing. I've been using WordPress and Elementor for some time now. I love it. I really enjoy these meetups with Will. There's a lot to learn here, so I'm glad you guys are here to learn along with us.
Thanks, Julia. And unfortunately, Morris is not here either, but as the four of us, we look after this Elementor Sydney meetup. We do have a code of conduct. You can see that on the elementor.com community code of conduct. For that, you can read that yourself. Essentially, just be nice and respectful for everyone. That'd be good if you can do that. Okay, we're going to give the floor to you guys. So we'll spend 2 or 3 minutes. Just if anyone would like to introduce themselves, say what you do. Your name, what you do, where you come from, and most importantly, what you are drinking. I am drinking, I've got a glass of water, and I have a cup of decaf tea with me at the moment, and later on I shall have some wine. So if anyone would like to introduce themselves, put up the hand, either virtually or put up the hand, literally. And the floor is open. On mic, unmute yourself. Put your video on and let us know who you are, what you do, and where you're from. If you'd like to, but no pressure.
Would be happy to meet you.
Charlie.
Hi there. I'm Charlie. I'm in the UK. I've been using Elementor and WordPress for now maybe 3-4 years, and it's just to run my own scuba diving companies based out in Thailand.
Listen, welcome, Charlie. Thanks for coming back. Anyone else?
Yep, I'll say
Lorna.
hello.
Hello, Lorna.
Hi, I'm in Perth. I actually work full-time for an agency that manages all of our national parks. And so I just develop websites for clients on a casual basis. And I fell in love with Elementor a while back and have been using it ever since. And we've actually got a project website. So I work for a government agency. And I created a project website for our department to use, which I manage, which is all about trails projects. So, which I'm not actually supposed to do because it's government, but we're progressive and we like to get things done.
We won't tell anyone.
No.
It's between us, no pressure. It's just streaming live and
It'll be fine.
of course.
Roberta, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, so I live in Byron Bay. I actually am a beginner with websites. I have no background in that. I'm an environmental scientist and environmental consultant. So I decided to make my own business online and okay, how to start and make my own site. So I jumped in and made my site with Elementor, but I still think I need to improve a lot and learn more.
It's the best way to start.
Place. Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else like to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Nika Taylor, and I'm in Pennsylvania. Sorry, my video isn't on because it's 4 a.m. here, and I wanted to catch the recording. I'm a freelance designer, and I've been using Elementor for about 3 years now, and I deal with small businesses in Africa, the UK, and the US, but I'm just trying to increase my my business, grow my business, and I'm happy to be here. But I do have to go back to sleep now. Thank you so much for this recording.
No problem. Welcome, Nika.
Thank you for joining us. Go back to sleep.
Go back to sleep. If you've got any questions, then you can ask them on the Elementor website, or you can ask them in the Facebook group as well. And if you are in the Facebook group just now, just please be aware that we're not monitoring that. So we can't look at the comments and feed them through, unfortunately. You can jump in the Zoom if you want to comment, but if there are any comments in the Facebook group afterwards, I'll try and answer them as best I can after the meeting, maybe tomorrow or something. Okay, I don't think there's anyone else that got their hands up, so I think we can safely move on. Okay. We'd like to do a little bit of news. There's not been so much news this month. Elementor Pro version 3.7.2 that was released, but it's not a lot. So there's a few fixes for those, a few tweaks, but not an awful lot that's been happening. I guess the big news was from Elementor acquiring a company called Stratic. And if you don't know who Stratic are, it's a hosting company that basically allows you to translate your WordPress website into a static solution. And what we talk about static solution is that it's HTML files. So what this is doing is essentially it decouples the WordPress CMS that you log into, the editor, the back end. It decouples parts and separates that from the front end that normal visitors would see. So essentially you as an administrator still log in and you can still edit stuff. But then once you've edited something, the magic happens in the background with Stratic, and it compiles it into HTML files, images, CSS files. It's all flat files, and that means it's really speedy to host, basically. So Elementor have acquired this company called Stratic. We assume, we haven't heard, but we assume that they will work that into the Elementor cloud hosting. And if you haven't heard what that is, it's basically Elementor offers a single license of Elementor Pro with hosting, like a yearly hosting as well. And it's in the cloud. So it is reasonably fast. It's not the fastest, but it's reasonably fast for that. And one can assume that they're going to be using this Stratic to bolster that particular solution at some point. We haven't seen anything at the moment, and we haven't heard anything at all. So it's just pure speculation at this moment. But it's probably something they'd be working towards for that. Okay, let's look. Okay, let's move on to tonight's talk. You'll have to bear with me. I'm on holiday just now. I'm in lovely Bundaberg and have had sunshine today, which is fantastic. But in holiday home, I've only got a small computer, so I've not got my multi-screens. So bear with me. Okay, so tonight we are going to be talking about Google Analytics. We're going to be talking about Google Search Console, and we're going to be talking about conversion tracking. And those are all kind of probably medium to advanced conversations. And for those of you who are slipping, Nika, I'll put time codes so we can jump to certain places. So I'll be covering Google Analytics, I'll be covering Google Search Console, and I'll be covering conversion tracking. You can jump between those 3 points in the presentation if you're watching it on catch up for those. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so Google Analytics. So if you've had a website for a few years, then if you're connected to Google Analytics at the moment, then you're probably using Google Universal Analytics. That's the very kind of first version that Google came out with. Google are sunsetting. In fact, they're shutting it down, this Google Universal Analytics. They're shutting that down on July the 1st, 2023. So next year, basically. So if you want to keep your analytics going, if you want to still use Google Analytics, you're going to have to move or migrate your system over to the new Google Analytics, which is version 4 that's coming out. So bye-bye Universal Analytics and hello Google Analytics version 4. And that's usually called GA4. Now, if you don't know which version of Google Analytics that you're currently running at the moment, then the best way to find out is this little website here. So it's called BuiltWith, so builtwith.com. It's a lovely little website. Sorry, let me just put this here, that's better. And it can tell you what the website is built with, not just Google Analytics. It actually tells you what WordPress version, WordPress plugins, themes, all that sort of stuff that's in there. So it's a really, really useful site if you're just browsing a normal site to figure out what it's actually being built with. But in general, you can see if you scroll down to an analytics and tracking section. So I've just done this with one of my websites. You can see here it comes down analytics and tracking. It will tell you which versions of Google Analytics that you are using. So here's an example of one of my websites, and it says using Google Universal Analytics, which I still am. But I'm also using Google Analytics 4, which is the new version. It's called Google Analytics 4. It's called GA4, it's called GAV4. So there's lots of acronyms for it, but essentially it's telling you here, if you don't see the Google Analytics 4, then you're probably still using the old version and need to migrate over. Google Analytics version 4, it's been available for about a year, possibly about a year. So if you have built your website and connected to Google in the last year, you probably might be running version 4 already. But this website is a great website to check exactly which versions you are running. So Universal Analytics is the old one. Google Analytics version 4 is the new one that you need to move to with it before next year. Okay, moving on. Okay, there is another way to find out, and this is kind of more technical way of looking at it. So this here is looking at the source code of your website. Now you can get to the source code with your right-hand click on any of your website pages, and then go down to view page source. And that might change depending on which browser you're looking at, but it's usually a control and view, or your right-hand click and look at view page source. And it comes up with all the code of your website. And you're basically, what you want to do is control F or find within that code, the word Google. And you're basically scrolling down that code and you're looking for these things here, these code blocks here. So this one here is Google Universal Analytics at the top. And that's what it's going to look like for that block there. The Google Universal Analytics, they start with a U and an A. So Universe Alpha dash, that's the old Universal Analytics. So you'll be able to see your identifier there. And that'll tell you that you're running the old version. The new version, version 4, that's the code block at the bottom. And Google Analytics version 4, your ID starts with G, so a capital G dash. So that's a good way of determining which one, if you don't want to run it through the other website, you can always have a look in your code, look for UA dash or G dash in the Google section, and that'll tell you which versions that your website or your client website is currently connected to. So a couple of different ways to do that. The last way is obviously you can actually look in Google Analytics itself and have a look and see which version of Analytics you are in. Okay, so when you log in to your Google Universal Analytics account, the first thing you're going to have to do, this is migrating. If you want to migrate from Universal to GE4, log into your Google Analytics account, and you want to click on the admin button. And the admin button is the little cog that's down in the bottom left. I've not got it on the screen, but you'll see it in later screens. The bottom left, all the way down, click on that, and you enter into admin mode for here. And we need to be in admin mode to migrate across from Universal to version 4 for that. Okay, so make sure you are in the correct account as well. So the account is at the top left-hand side here, just next to the analytics logo. So this one here is my website, so it's willbrown.com. So make sure you're in the right website that you want to migrate across, especially if you're connected to lots and lots. So if you've got client websites, you've probably at least got view access to your client's analytics. So make sure you're in the right one. And in order to migrate, you obviously need to be an admin of the analytics. So if you're just a viewer, you're probably going to need to ask your client for admin access before you can go and migrate if that's something that you want to do. So here's my website, willbrown.com. I've logged into admin account and I'm in the property. I'm in willbrown.com. I've got my all website data. So what I've done here is in the property, you'll see 3 columns, account, property, and view. In the middle column, the property column, then you will see there's this GA4 setup assistant. So Google has made it really, really super easy to migrate from Universal to a Google Analytics 4, mostly. So what I say mostly is some of your custom stuff, custom reporting that you've got, you're going to have to bring that across, convert it into the new version 4. And I'll touch on that a little bit later on when we're talking about setting goals. Okay, so the first thing you do, click on that GE4 setup assistant. The next thing is going to take you through a little bit of a wizard setup. So here it's saying Google Analytics 4 property setup assistant, blah, 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 blah. Basically, you want to click on the get started for that. So click on the get started button. It's going to tell you a little bit about Google Analytics version 4 and what the wizard is going to do. But essentially, you have a choice to whether allow you to collect data using your existing tags, and they can migrate the tags across. So if you've already got tags and stuff set up, click on that button, and it'll do its best to transfer those tags across. If you don't use tags, don't worry, just leave it as is, and then just click on the create property at the bottom. And it really is a simple process. It's as simple as that. And that will migrate your Universal Analytics over to your new Google Analytics version 4. And what you'll see, and once you're finished, you'll see that you've got your old Universal Analytics, which is UA-, and then you've got your new GE4 Analytics version, which is G. So it's G- something. Okay, so in the property column, that's where you're going to find these new settings. So the property column is the middle or here. So now you'll find that the GE4 migration, the migration button is gone. And what you want to do is go down to the data streams. Okay, so in the middle under property, usually the third one down, click on data streams, and that's going to show you what your Google Analytics version 4 properties are. And you can see here at the bottom, I've clicked on data streams and I have my website, willbrown.com website, GE4. That's what I've named it, Google Analytics 4. And you can see it's actually receiving data here, which is good. That's always a good thing to make sure you're receiving. So really, really simple to move across and create a new property. Google's made that super, super simple for you. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so we've migrated across. So we're now no longer Universal, or this Universal is still there, but we've created a Google Analytics version 4 account. But if you've not got that added to WordPress, then you won't be receiving data into your Google Analytics 4. So if I go back, I can go back. There we go. It's at the bottom here when I created this. In the data streams, you can click on that and check to see if it's receiving data. Now, if you've just created a GA4 account, moving away from Universal, that's going to say not receiving. So down where I've got willbrown.com website-GA4, This one says it's receiving because it already was when I created this presentation. But normally if you just migrate it, it's going to say not receiving. So what we need to do is we need to create a link in Google Analytics version 4 to your WordPress website, the same way as we did or you did with the Universal Analytics before. Okay, now there's several ways of linking GA4 to your WordPress website. This is probably the easiest way of doing it. And it's really good for beginners because you don't have to get your hands dirty with code. So this one here is called Monster Insights, and it's a free plugin. It does have a pro upgrade, but the free version will work just as well. So you can get it from wordpress.org/plugins/Google-Analytics- for WordPress, or just type in Monster Insights and it will come up. Okay, so connecting to Google Analytics is made really easy with their setup wizard. You basically click a button. It will then ask you to log into your Google Analytics account. If you're already logged in, it'll just come up because it knows you're already logged in. And it'll ask you which account you want to connect to your WordPress website for that. So you can go through this website, this plugin here. It's really good again for beginners because you don't have to get dirty with code. It will extract the code snippet for you. It will extract your Google GA4 identifying code, and it'll add it to WordPress. So you don't need to add any code at all. It does it all automatically. Now, the one thing I don't like about this particular plugin, and you can kind of see it here, is as well as adding Google Analytics version 4 code to your website, and it also adds all this dashboard analytics. So it actually brings in some of the Google Analytics data and shows it on your WordPress dashboard as little widgets, admin widgets for those. Now that can be handy for some people, but for me personally, I don't like it because it kind of slows things down and it kind of stores additional data. So the data is stored in Monster Insights servers. And so each time you're looking at your dashboard, it's bringing it down from there. It's caching it, yes, which is filling up database, but it's still extra time and extra stuff that's on your website that's kind of slowing down things, I think, in my opinion. So again, this is really easy for you to use for beginners. But for me personally, I don't like it because it's got that additional information, connections and stuff that's slowing down my website. So what I tend to use is something called Header and Footer Scripts Inserter. And there's several of these different plugins, and they'll kind of do the same thing. They allow you to put code in your header or your footer that several applications ask for when you're connecting things to WordPress. But I like this one. This one's nice and simple. It's nice and easy. I've got the link down here, and all the links for this presentation I will put on the Elementor events website. I'll put it on the Facebook website, and so you'll have all the links to these presentations, so don't worry about that. So if you're looking for a super lightweight way of adding Google Analytics to your website, this is what I suggest, using Header and Footer Scripts Inserter or some similar plugin. And that's going to allow you to copy and paste the code from Google Analytics into this plugin, and then allow you to start tracking your website through Google Analytics. So I'm going to take you through how to do that using this particular method right here. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is find that code snippet that we need to copy into this header and footer plugin so that it can then link WordPress with Google Analytics version 4. So the first thing to do is to navigate to your Google Analytics, click on your admin, which again is the cog at the bottom left. So that's the first thing to do. And then the second thing to do is check that using, again, the same account, make sure it's the same website that you're linking to get that proper code to link it to your WordPress website. Now, if you're a brand new user, you can go ahead and create a new account and do it all in this and set it all up. And hopefully that will work. But, you know, if you go through the process of migrating first and then come back to link up the WordPress, I think that's an easier thing to do. Otherwise, you kind of get muddled in the process for those. So go into admin view in Google Analytics. Make sure you've got the correct website account selected. The next thing you want to do is in that middle column, in your properties column, you want to select the data stream. So that's what we looked at before. So select the data streams, and then in the all, or the web, doesn't really matter, in the all, click on the number 2, which is your website, which you created in the past. So click on that one there. And in that one, you will find this here. You'll find your measurement ID for this. And that's what you use. So make sure you copy that somewhere So again, with Google Analytics version 4, it's G dash something. You don't want the stream ID, you want the measurement ID. So G dash something. So that's that one. So copy that there and keep it into Notepad or whatever you've got handy on your website, on your computer. And the next thing you want to do within this, if you scroll down a little bit from here, it's got this tagging instructions. And so within that same dialog box, you want to click on tagging instructions for there. And then it will expand this particular thing. You want to make sure you click on add new on-page tag. Scroll down a little bit and you can actually see global site tag, so gtag.js. That's the one you want to expand. And that's the bit of code snippet that you want to go. Now, this does have your tag ID, so G dash embedded in it for those. So what you can do here is you can just copy this whole code snippet here. So just to go through that again, make sure you log into your Google Analytics, go to the admin view, make sure you got the right account set up. In the middle column, in the property column, go down to data streams, and then click on your website, your GE4 website. That's going to pop up a dialog box. It's going to show you, make sure you've got the right details here. You've got your measurement ID, and then down below that is this tagging instructions, and then expand this global site tag, and then you'll see the code and copy it from the little copy button, or you can highlight it all and copy it verbally. But that's the bit of code that you need to link your WordPress website to Google Analytics version 4. Okay, so now we flip back to WordPress. We've already got that plugin, the header and footer installed, and we can find that it's in the settings and the scripts. So if you go to your WordPress dashboard, go to settings, click on scripts, you'll find this page. It's got a header, and then it's got a footer section. What we want to do is we want to put in our Google Analytics code in the header. So we simply just paste that code in there and then press save for that. And it is as simple as that, okay? So that's the steps if you want to use this plugin rather than the Monster Insights, which kind of does this for you. But if you want to have nice, neat, and lean WordPress website that's not bringing in metrics from Google, from Monster Insights, you can follow this method here. So Google Analytics, find your property, click on it, find the code, copy it, come back into WordPress, use this little plugin, copy the code into the head section here, remember and save as well, and then go back to your front page and refresh it a couple of times. So it's obviously a good idea if you actually go into Google Analytics, so flip back into Google Analytics and make sure that you do actually, that it's connecting. So there's two ways you can do that. You can go into the property section, you can click on the data streams, which is this one here, and it should say receiving traffic. It should start say receiving traffic. Another way is to actually go into your Google Analytics front end. So we're not in the admin area just now, we're in reports. So we go into the reports one, which is the number 1 highlighted there. And we want to click on real time. And that can show us what users are connected right now and here. So click on that, click on real time. Maybe give it a minute or so just to make sure the data is coming in. Flip over to your WordPress website, click around on a couple of things on your front website, click on the about, click on the contact, come back here, and you should see the analytics start to flow through in real time in about 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds here. And this is an example here that I did for this presentation. I went into my website, clicked around a little bit, came in here, went to reports in real time, and after about 30, 60 seconds, it started to show that there was data coming through. And it's pinpointed me. You can see here I was in Sydney because I was there last week. I've only got the 1 user, boo-hoo, but that was just me, but that's all right. So there we go. We've connected, we've migrated Google Universal Analytics over to a G4 account. And then we've taken that G4 code, we've basically linked our WordPress website with the Google Analytics. 2 methods of doing that: a simple method for beginners, you don't have to worry about code, and a nice lean method if you want to make a really fast website, if you don't want to connect all that, bring down all that data from Monster Insights. A really easy way, simple way of doing that as well. And then we've looked in Google Analytics and we've verified that our GA4 data is coming into Google Analytics from our WordPress website. So phew, that was a lot of stuff. What we're going to do is take a little break, refresh ourselves. I'll have a look at the chat and see if there's any questions that we can go over this.
Yeah, Will, yes, I was going to say we have a question from John.
Yeah.
who's asking why not use Elementor custom code?
You could do. There's several methods of linking the code. As long as you get the code from Google Analytics, you can basically go into page templates. So the old PHP method, you can find your WordPress header.php and copy the information, the code into there. So that's one method. You can use the Monster Insights plugin, and that does it without any code. You can use this plugin, the header and footer, and there's a handful of different plugins that do exactly the same. There's a plugin called Code Snippets as well. You can add JavaScript, HTML, and code, and then you can specify where it goes, like body, header, footer, that sort of stuff. So that's a method. Yes, so you could use Elementor custom code for that as well. There's lots of different ways, as long as you can inject that little bit of code into the header of your WordPress website by any of these means, then you're basically linking WordPress with Google Analytics, and they can start talking to each other. So yeah, great question. Thank you for that. If you've got any other questions about Google Analytics at configuring them, making WordPress talk to each other, then let me know in the chat just now. Otherwise, we'll just refresh ourselves. We'll let our brain scream out all that information, let it soak in a little bit. That's my cat. This is Lily. She was probably about 6 months when I took this. She's now 8 months. She's at home with the grandparents at the moment. That's a lovely little cat. That was her when she was cold. So that's her on our sofa. We pulled the blanket up. She was super, super cozy. Excellent. Okay. Just get a little bit more tea. I'm trying to do this little pause now in between some of my talks, because some of my talks are a lot of information kind of thrown in your face. So I'm just let people just relax a little bit, let the information soak in, let people ask any questions, and then head on. So, okay, we'll move on. Very cute. And she uses it to her full advantage, Lorna, I can tell you. Right.
Why not?
Why not? Okay, let me just get this back.
Well, that was super useful, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Charlie.
I think I've actually got Analytics GA4 working for the first time ever. It just shows that I've just clicked it on myself and it shows that there's a user. So,
yep.
Yeah, I don't know why I find it so challenging connecting stuff in Google.
I think a lot of people are overwhelmed because Google, like myself in these presentations, it's like data in your face. And you're like, well, where do I go? Where do I get all this stuff? You know,
yeah.
Until you start playing around with it and looking at tutorials, then it's like this big monster that you have to tame. So it can kind of put people off a little bit.
And last year when it came out, like when they the fourth version came out, the instructions from Google itself were pretty complex to follow. So it's a very easy step now compared to what it used to be last year.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered Google Analytics and converting those to Google Analytics. Analytics version 4. Excuse me. So let's look at Google Search Console. Now, a lot of people get a little bit confused about the two. Some people say, you know, they can understand that Google Analytics is visitor data. But they maybe don't understand so much about what Google Search Console is. And I get a lot of questions to say, you know, should I use it? What is it? Should I use it? Should I care? That sort of thing. So Google Search Console, it was formerly called, it's still called Google Search Console in brackets, formerly called Webmaster Tools, but it's not been called that for years. So it's called Google Search Console. Again, this is a free platform, free. We're going to siphon all your data. Free to use, so they don't pay for it. Tool from Google for anyone that's got a website to monitor. And this basically, where Google Analytics looks at visitors, this is more on how Google views your website. Okay, so if Google are going to throw errors tracking your website, if they found usability errors, anything that might stop them from tracking and analyzing your website for SEO, it's going to appear here in Google Search Console. So this is why I say to people, it's as important as connecting to Google Analytics. So Google Analytics gives you all the visitor data, But that's not going to mean anything for SEO if your website's throwing errors left, right, and center. So if you want to make sure that Google is indexing your website to the best of its ability and topping all those scores, then you need to also link Google Search Console to see what errors the Google search crawlers, the Google bots are throwing, so you can then go and fix them, basically. So if you don't have this installed, if you don't have this connected, then you're basically clueless. You don't know what Google is doing. And then I have people that come back to me to say, why am I getting 20% in all these performance scores? And then I connect into Google Search Console, look at it, and there's like 5 billion errors. I go, well, that's why. Okay, so it's as important as Google Analytics to connect and use. Okay, so in Google Search Console, what sort of things can you see? You can see things like mobile performance. You can see rich search results. You can see your highest traffic queries and pages as well. You can also submit your website sitemap to Google Search Console, Google basically. So if this is a new website that you're doing, if it's a new client website that you're doing, you can submit the sitemap to Google to try and get it indexed a little bit quicker as well. So here's the basic interface when you log in. Again, I've got it from my willbrown.com website, which is pretty new, which is why you're not seeing a lot of users. I'm trying to build that up. I'll get there eventually. For that, we can see you've got an overview, which is performance. It's got coverage. Then you've got other areas like performance. You can look at the page experience. You can look at your core web vitals as well, which is Google's own analytics for not just how fast your website is, but also how usable it is. And all that takes into consideration in its search engine algorithm and to where to place you in the rankings, basically, for those. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so how do you connect Google Search Console with your WordPress website? Well, there's several ways of doing that. This is probably the easiest way. You could probably select this domain. So you've got two ways. You can do a URL prefix, and this method is for connecting kind of subdomains for those. If you've got like lots of subdomains like courses, whatever. But the easiest way to connect Google Search Console to your WordPress website is via your primary domain. Okay. So probably best to click on that one there, and then you enter your domain name for your website. So Will Brown, if this was me, I'd type in willbrown.com by selecting the domain, and I click on continue. What I probably wouldn't do is https :// because that will only measure that one specific thing. So by doing the domain, it allows you to cover everything. So maybe in some point you might want to start your own courses or shop or something like that. This covers everything for there. So it's probably easiest to start off. Click on domain, put in your domain name, .com or whatever it is, .com.au, and click on continue. Okay, now the second part, Google's going to ask you, do you really own that domain name? Prove it to me. This is the Google police with their truncheon. Yeah, I want to know that you own this domain. And there's several ways that you can verify that you are that domain owner. Probably the easiest way, and that's probably why it's at the top, is for the HTML file. What you can do here is you expand that, you download an HTML file. It's got like a random character number.html file. It's got a little bit of code in there. Okay, don't change anything, just you download that to your local computer, and you can FTP that or SFTP or use File Manager on cPanel or Plesk to upload that to your root folder. So that's where WordPress is installed. That's where your wp-config.php is. Upload it to there, and then you can go to the next. You can click on done, and then Google will verify. It'll have a look for that HTML file and do that. Let me just see, is there another? Nope, I've not got that. There are other ways to do that. If you use Google Tag Manager, then you can use a tag for that, but we're not talking about Google Tag Manager at the moment. If you have that set up, then you can use Tag Manager. But I think that you can also use your Google Analytics account. So you can click on Google Analytics, and it'll ask you to enter your Google stuff. You connect through it and go, yep, okay, that's fine. I know who you are connected. Or the last way is to use your actual domain records, your DNS records. So you can log into your DNS provider, and that's the person that looks after your DNS. You can go into your DNS for your particular website. You can then look at its records, and you can create a new record called a TXT record. And again, that's the one at the bottom here. So domain name provider. You click it down, You're basically adding a TXT record, and Google will tell you this code, alphanumeric code, to put in there. Put it in there, save your DNS, probably wait for 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, come back, click on done, and verify that you are the owner. So lots of ways to verify. HTML is probably the easiest. For beginners, they can understand, download file, upload it, verify. But once you are verified, then you'll get to this console here. And it gives a very Google Search Console, or GSC. It gives you a very good overview of the performance of your website in terms of search queries, top pages, countries, devices. Now, you can get all that stuff from Google Analytics, yes, but that's more from the viewpoint of visitors. You know, what visitors are using. This is more from the viewpoint of what Google crawl bots, the web bots, actually see of your website for those. Now, again, this is my brand new website, so the numbers are not huge. Definitely working on that just now. But you can see here what it's got, you know, on the performance. It's got total clicks, total impressions. It's got little graphs, similar things. You scroll down a little bit, you can see some of the top queries that are just down there. So Will-Brown. I've got Power Words SEO, things like that. The number of clicks, number of impressions. So it kind of merges some of the data of users, but it's mostly focused on what Google itself sees about your website. Okay, next one. Here we go. So this is the coverage. So click on coverage to see if there's any issues. And this is where all the issues that Google will, if Google finds issues on your website, this is where they're going to get reported. Thankfully, I've not got any ones here. So there's no errors, no issues. But this is the first place that you should come after you've connected Google Search Console to see if Google's thrown up any errors on your website. Now, notice here the big arrow that I'm pointing to. Notice that the Google primary crawler is set to a smartphone. And that kind of tells you a lot. Okay, so it's indicating that Google is looking at sites from a mobile first perspective. So, you know, make sure that your websites are fully optimized for mobile. Now, you might have a low mobile usage, so you might see that 90% of all your users are desktop, and that might be fine. But Google itself, the crawlers by default, are looking at your website on a smartphone. So if you're picking up errors here, that's going to reflect in your SEO, it's going to reflect in your search engine rankings. So you absolutely must make sure that you've got no errors here and deal with all those errors. What type of errors? It could be that some of your content is not adjusting to mobile. It could be overlapping, and that's going to cause an issue. I had one of the viewers of one of my meetups actually came back and said, one of your websites, which one was it? I think it was wpwingman.com. The intro video that I had at the top actually wasn't resized to mobile, and it was hanging over the side. So I came into Google Search Console, and sure enough, right in this coverage, Google was saying, there's an issue with your front page. It's not mobile friendly, all that sort of stuff. So definitely make sure that your WordPress website works nice and friendly on mobile to get the good results back, because that's what it's looking at. That's what Google is looking at first. Okay, moving on. What am I going to say here? Sitemaps. So if you are just created a website, or if you've just created a client website, you can just leave it, and Google will probably eventually find it, pick it up, and index it. But it's probably a good thing to force that. So this is a good place to come. Come to your Google Search Console. Down in the index column on the left-hand side, go to Sitemaps, and you can actually add your WordPress sitemap to there, and then Google will start indexing it and going through and making sure that everything is okay on that. So that's probably a must thing that you should do for new websites. Probably a bad idea to leave Google just to do it itself. And so do come here and add your sitemap. Now, there's lots of ways to get your WordPress sitemap. By default, WordPress, I think for the past few versions, since 5 point something, it's actually come with its own inbuilt sitemap. And you can get that. You don't have to install any other plugins to generate a WordPress sitemap. You can get at that by typing in your WordPress website address as normal, put a slash on the end, and type the word sitemap.xml. And then without any plugins installed, without Yoast, without SEO Press, without Rank Math, WordPress core will generate sitemaps for you for that. So you can see here, here's an example. So I've got my willbrown.com. It's / it's called sitemap, I think. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe it's called sitemaps.xml and not sitemap. I'll correct that for you for those. But I think the WordPress one is sitemap, or HXML, but I run SEO Press on most of my WordPress websites. That's probably called sitemaps with an S, HTML. We can see here, whatever way, I've added my, submitting my sitemap here, and it tells you its status. So it says sitemaps indexed, last time it was submitted, the last time that Google read it, and then the status of that. And again, you should check here for any errors. If you've got errors here in the status, it will say error, and it will tell you which errors there are. But if it's finding errors with your sitemap, that's a huge, big SEO issue. Because if it's not reading your sitemap properly, it's not being able to find all your pages and stuff. Because it looks at sitemaps first. It's a nice, easy way to crawl. And then after it's read the sitemap, it'll then go and index and see if there's any other links for there. So make sure that it can see your sitemaps and it can index it all and it's got success. So it's very, very important that you do that. I've just lost my place on my phone. Okay, I think that is us done. Yes, back to Lily. Okay, so not as much to do with Google Search Console as it is with Google Analytics, but so important that you make sure you connect that as well as your Google Analytics so that you can see what Google is looking at with your website, both in mobile view, but also desktop. But you need to be able to see those errors because, you know, if those errors build up and if they're left over time, then that is really going to affect your search rankings. It's going to go down and down and down and down and down. So, okay, I'm going to have a cup of tea, some water. I'm going to have a look at the questions. See if there's anything in the chat. If you've got any questions about Google Search Console, you can pop them down there and I'll try my best to answer.
Yeah, Will, I've got a question. So
Sure.
I use rank math to make the sitemap. And then when I get to submit the sitemaps into Google Search Console, do you just have to do the index one, or do I also have to do the post and page sitemaps? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. If you're using a plugin like Yoast SEO, SEO Press, Rank Math, or et al., anything else, probably best to, within that plugin, have a look at the sitemap settings and for yourself choose which pages and posts and stuff you want to index and which you don't. So you probably want to exclude user archives. You probably want to exclude tags and categories, that sort of stuff, and just leave like the normal blog posts and pages for those. Within those plugins, then most of them will create a hierarchical. They'll create like a one XML, like sitemaps.xml. And if you actually look at that one file, it actually lists all the separate ones. So within this kind of top level, sitemaps.html, if you have a look at it, there'll be another link to like pages.xml, post.xml, users.xml, all that sort of stuff in there. So you want to make sure that you have the top level XML index, and then that will contain all the sub ones for there. Yeah.
That's actually what I've already got. So it goes to / sitemap index.html.
Yeah.
And then inside of that, there's two links, one going to the post and one going to the page sitemap. Do I need to submit the page and the post one, or just the index?
Just that index one there. And then
Okay.
it'll pick up the other sub indexes from there. If it's got any issues, it'll tell you in this particular list. It'll tell you on the side that it can't read something or can't find this file or something from there. But yeah, always submit the top level one on there.
Because in the past, I submitted all three. And so I'm just looking at it now, and the main index XML site has got a success and everything's okay. But the post sitemap and the page sitemap, it says that it couldn't fetch.
Yeah, so there could be an issue with that. It could be an old one, or it could be sensing that it's duplicate for itself. So, you know, that they could be saying, well, I've already indexed that, so I'm not going to fetch that one because you know, I've already got a copy of that. Yeah. And the reason that you want to submit the top level one is that sometimes, you know, sometimes you can change your mind. So you might have an editorial site that you now allow people to do guest posting on. So now you've got like editors, you've got users, and you actually maybe do want to have them included as your sitemap, because you're kind of promoting guest plugins, you're promoting editorial content, so that it comes up with that particular person. Normally, you wouldn't want that because it's duplicating content. So if you're the only person that's writing blog posts on your website, you don't want to then submit an author sitemap because it's basically the same stuff. Yeah. If you've got multiple people submitting blog posts on your website, you probably do want to do an author archive for those. So if you're just submitting those single sitemaps, you could forget about that, and then it will just index posts and pages, and you might not get the users. So it's always useful to have the top level sitemaps.html, and then you can kind of control what goes in there using your rank math or Yoast SEO and that sort of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. I'll minimize chat. Go back to Lily. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. Okay, so this is the last part that I want to cover. I've already went a little bit over what I want to do. But there's a lot of stuff in here. It's kind of 3 presentations in one, if you will. So what we're going to look at now is Google Analytics conversions. Now, if you've been using Google Analytics, Google Universal Analytics, they call them goals. But goals are no longer in the new GA4. They're now called conversions. Now, Google will try, when you're using that migration thing, if one of the boxes were for tags and stuff, Google will try its best to move stuff over, but it doesn't move over goals. So if you've already got goals in Universal Analytics, you're going to have to recreate them as conversions in Google Analytics 4, which is it sucks a bit for sales and marketing people, but that's just what's going to have to happen. Okay, right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try, because it's really difficult, I'm going to try and show you how to create a conversion for a landing page. So if somebody lands on a particular page, you want to track that as a conversion. So you can come into Google Analytics version 4 and you can see how many people have landed on that particular thing and created a conversion. Now this could be used, you can use this, you can change this a little bit. So we could think about, setting up button clicks and stuff, but let's just go super simple and show you how to do like a landing page conversion. So here we are in here. We are in Google Analytics version 4. We are in reports and we're in engagement and this then pages and screens. So without doing anything at all, you can come into this particular report and this will tell you what your top pages are and they call it screens. So pages by views, by users, by new users, and it's got all the average time, bounce rate, all that sort of stuff. So all the good stuff that you normally had in Universal Analytics, you've got here in engagement and pages and screens. Now, this will tell you your top pages for here, but we kind of want to do a little bit more specific. We want to start measuring specific pages in our WordPress website and calling them conversions, which is the old goals for those. Okay, so here is what we're going to do. On my website, I have, on the homepage, my willbrown.com, I have 3 boxes. Some people tell me I should only have 1, but I have 3. And these are aimed at my target audience, which is WordPress, freelance WordPress developers and freelance WordPress designers, solopreneurs running a freelance business. I've got 3 boxes here. These are lead magnets. I have 1 for generating more leads, 1 for improving conversions, and 1 for winning high value projects. So what I want to do, I want to know is how many people are clicking through on these and see which ones, are working the best for those. Now I have no way of tracking that without setting it up with Analytics version 4. So we're going to take one of these and we're going to do the generate more leads. So if I click on that button here, I want more leads. It takes me to this form for here, and it's basically gathering somebody's first name and the email address. That's it. And then it adds them to my email list, and then it sends them whatever resource this is. So a fairly simple lead magnet with a landing page, just to gather people's information, put on an email list, and that's good. So when people fills that out, then they get to this page. And this is what I call my thank you page for here. And they basically say, thanks very much. Actually, it puts in their name. as well, if that name, and then it says check your email for a free guide, blah, 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 blah. So this web page here, I put the URL down here. It's willbrown.com/free-business-resources, then a slash, and then thank-you. Okay, so that's the URL these people land on. And not part of this, but it's actually got some query parameters that says first name equals whatever the first name is that they put in this form. So it should say if it comes through, it's just like thanks Bob, or thanks Will, or thanks Julia, or thanks Charlie. Okay, but that's a particular URL. This is what we want to track. So if somebody doesn't fill out this and they don't go through this, click here, fill out this, get the thank you page, then that's not a proper conversion, and they're not going to end up on the thank you page for that. So this is what we want. We want to track this thank you page. So how do we do that? So the first thing we need to do is we need to come into our Google Analytics version 4, and then we want to click down at the bottom on the left-hand side menu. This little ... -- thing is called events menu. So we're going to click on there and then click and default to the events for here. And we can see here that these are the existing events that Google Analytics 4 tracks. So they're tracking things like clicks, they're tracking things like first visit, they're tracking things like page view for those, and scroll as well, and session start. So these are the events, and when somebody's on your website, that's what Google Analytics version 4 is tracking, just natively. But we want to add to that. We want to add our own event so that we can then track this conversion that's going through our lead page. So what we want to do is we want to click on the create event button. So the blue button, modify event, we want to create a new event. So click on that. And that's going to come up with a little dialog box that pops up. Make sure, obviously, that you're on the right property. So the GE4, we've got our ID number there, so we know we're on the right place. Or here, we can see already, I've already created this, but yours will be blank here. So we want to click on the create button at this side, and I'll take you through how I've created this. Okay, so once you click on the create event, this is what's going to come a new dialog box. And this is going to allow you to configure your event. So the first thing is we need to give the event a name. Google Analytics, like a lot of other systems, it only allows you uppercase, lowercase. You're not allowed to use spaces. You can use underscores or dashes, I believe, and you're limited to a number of characters. I can't remember what it is. And of course, it's unique. So you need to make sure that your event name is unique and it's different from other things. So here I've created one called free_resource_download_thank_you because I like to be super descriptive, but anal about that. So put in your unique custom event name, and that's the one that we're going to use later on. Then under the matching conditions, we want to put two things. So the parameter, and these are Google Analytics 4 parameters. And if you're not sure those, you can look them up for those anywhere on the website, or look at the Google Analytics help document. But the two that we are going to track is we're going to add one. So in the parameter, you type in page_location. In fact, I've done this the wrong way around because I'm super weird. But the first thing you probably put is event_name, and then the operator equals, and then value is page_view. And what that is doing, it's telling Google Analytics 4 that we want to track the event name, and we want to make sure that equals page view. Now we know from the previous one that Google Analytics is already by default tracking page view. See that down the middle there? So it's always tracking this metric. So every time somebody lands on a page, Google is tracking that as a page view. So what we're basically piggybacking onto that particular event. So that event name, so when a page view triggers, that's a condition, but we also want to put a separate condition, an additional one. So the next parameter, so we click on add condition, which allows us to put in a new condition. The parameter this time we use is page_location. And that's a Google Analytics parameter that it tracks. The operator we're going to use is contains. You could use equal, but contains, we're going to use contains for this one. And then the value I'm putting in is /free-business-resources /thank-you. So it's basically, we'll go back a little bit, it's basically the URL of this page. Now, we don't just put in the whole willbrown.com, just something unique enough to know that it's that particular page that we want to track, okay, as another condition. So there's two conditions. So when somebody opens the page, which is called an event name, it's called page view. When someone views the page, and when that page location contains that particular part of the URL. That's what we were using for this particular event here. Now, probably you don't have to, but I like to click on this copy parameters for the source event because, as I said, I've got some URL parameters that the Gravity Forms feeds back into the thank you page. So it adds like first name equals and whatever the person's name, so that I can then customize this to say, thanks, Bob, thanks, Will. So I want to store those. You don't have to. I store those. But what I've also got here is in the lower section, and again, you don't have to do this. You can stop here and press save, but you can add what's called a modification. So you're adding a modification, just throwing extra information along with this event. And what I've put here is I've got two modifications. So the first one, I put a parameter called value. Now, value is a known Google Analytics parameter, value, and I put a value of 100. Then I've clicked add modification. I put another parameter, which Google Analytics version 4 knows what it is. It's called currency. And I put a value called AUD. Now, again, you don't have to do this, but what it allows you to do, what allows me to do, is whenever this event is triggered, it also assigns a value in a currency to that. And that way I can track, when people are going through this, I can track a monetary value to my lead conversion. So I know that, and it's not 100 values, I know that for each person that signs up for my lead magnet, I've got a rough value when they download that guide. Eventually, I know that I'm going to get kind of a sale from them at some point. And for me, in this example, that collection of that data is worth 100 Australian dollars. Okay? So if you've got your own lead magnets that you're looking to track through this, you can assign your own value, and that's going to appear in your GA4 metrics. So you can actually, after each month, after each 6 months, after each financial year, you can actually get a monetary value associated with the leads that you're collecting. Okay, so something extra that you can do if you want to put a specific value. And the reason you might want to do that is if you're comparing multiple lead magnets, you can see which one is bringing in the most money for that. You can maybe ditch one and focus your efforts on the other. So things get real when you start assigning money to them. You know? And that's why I do advise my clients when they're setting up this type of conversions goals and conversions. I do recommend that they set values for things. That could be arbitrary at first, or it could be real values. But if you start assigning money to stuff, then it makes things real. Okay? Think about all the gym memberships. You know, the reason that people pay gym memberships, you know, is they have to go. Look at the meetups. Most meetups events are free to go to. You have 100 people will sign up and like 10 people will turn up. But if you start charging $10, $20 for a meetup, you're going to go because you assign a monetary value, you paid your money. It's a monetary value, you feel obliged to do it. And the same happens in conversion metrics. If you're assigning real money to stuff, it makes it real. So it's just a tip that you can do. So here we go. We've set up a new event. We've called it Free Resource Download Thank You. We've told Google what we're looking for, that particular page that we're landing on. We'll get a little bit of a value just for that. So we want to save that one. Let's move on. And then we want to save all that data, and then we want to navigate back to conversions. So conversions is under events in GA4. We want to click on conversions, and what you probably want to do is visit that page a couple of times, go through your lead magnet to make sure it's working, a couple of times, put in a couple of fake addresses. And then when you come here, you're going to start to see that event is going to start showing up in this conversions here for this. Now, for here, make sure that, let's see, we want to track them here. So if it doesn't come up after you created it, we want to make sure that we're tracking it here. So we click on the new conversion. That's it, new conversion event button up here for those. And then you're basically adding in your event, your conversion name. So if it's not appearing here, you need to add it first. So click on, sorry, I'm getting a bit lost here, new conversion event, put in that conversion, that event name. You put, so that in this case, it's free resource download, thank you. And then click on OK, and that's adding it to this particular conversions window. So next time you come here, you can see how many people have went through that process and clicked on that particular mark, and you're basically marking that event as a conversion for those. Now, you can create up to 40. Have I got another window? This is blank. Okay, sorry, these, I don't know why those graphics are not showing up. But basically, you can create 40 of these conversion events, so up to 40 of these different event names, which means you can track 40 lead magnets, you can track 40 button presses, that sort of stuff, which is probably more than enough than you need. If you need more than 40, then you can start using things like URL parameters. And when we're doing all the conditions, we can add here, we can add additions or query parameters equal. So you can start branching out and using query parameters to specify particular pages if that's what you want to do. But basically, you'll need to wait probably about 12 or 24 hours for the data to start coming in here. Because that's the way that Google Analytics works. It waits 12 hours, maybe 24 hours, it collects the information and it presents it here on the dashboard. So if you're new, if you've configured the event, if you came here, added the conversion, and you don't see anything, that's okay. Come back tomorrow and the data should be in there for that. I'm sorry I haven't got that one. I don't know if that one's good. I'll add it in. I'll add it into presentation and I'll give the link to the presentation. But basically what I'm saying here is you basically navigate back to your conversions to have a look at the data for that. Unfortunately, the graphic's missing for that. And the next one, it's basically showing you two ways. Why these graphics going? Two ways that you can see your conversions. So one is in your, let's see if we can go back to one. It's got reports. I did have a report somewhere in this here. So in reports, you want to go to reports, which is this one in. You want to go to engagement, which is this one, and then you want to go to conversions. So the page up here, and that will show you all that data. And that new event that you've mapped the conversion will start coming through, and then you'll see it in this list. And you get access to all these bits of data like views, total views, users, new users. But there's actually, if you scroll along a little bit, and I know this graphic's missing, sorry for that. If you scroll along a little bit, you can actually click on, there's an events column, and you can click on that column and you can select your event, and it will show you just that particular event. So that's an easy way of having a look at all your events to see what data is coming in, how many users, and it will also tell you the cost evaluated in this particular one as well. There's another way. So you can do reports in here. You can click on acquisition, and acquisition, when it drops down, there's a part that says user acquisition, and it gives you similar data to this. But again, you can scroll along and there's a conversions, there's an events field where you can click down and click on your conversion, and it will show you exactly those ones that you've added, and it'll show you all that good stuff about bounce rate and cost, total number of users and stuff like that. So two ways that once you've added your conversion, you can go back to the reports and see where that data is coming in and filter all that. So I'm sorry those two screenshots did not come through. I will add them back in and make sure that in the presentation, I'm going to give you the link so you can see that. Okay, that's it. So that's the third and last segment of this. I've been talking for a long, long time for that. So thank you very much for bearing with me. If you guys got any questions, I will pop them in the chat. I'll do my best to answer them, but quickly, I don't want to put between presentation and talk stuff. So the very last one is next month. I'm going to talk about creating a custom login page using Elementor. So if you've got a client website, even your own website, you can kind of jazz it up and make yourself stand above the rest of the other developers and designers by creating a custom login screen just like that using Elementor. So I am going to stop my screen just now. Put all you lovely people back up on the screen. I'll get my chat open. There we go. There we go. And if you guys have got any questions, pop them in the chat or unmute yourself. Ask me anything about WordPress. I'll try my best to answer. I know it's been a long, long presentation, so sorry about that. So what have we got in the chat here? We have...
Everyone is really thanking you.
Oh, great. So,
yeah.
Demystifying Google Analytics and Google Search Console. A lot of people do get confused with those two, but yeah, definitely make sure you've got both of those in there. So if you have any questions, please fire away. Otherwise, we'll give people just a couple of minutes.
I probably have a silly question, Will.
There's never silly questions.
just in regards to the conversions you were mentioning, so you chose the thank you page as a source. But my question is, if you wanted to really know how many clicks you have on those 3 buttons in the previous page, would you need to add some tags? How would you go along to do that?
Probably the easiest way would be to use Google Tag Manager and add tags to the button. And you can do that within Elementor, quite easy. Maybe that could be a topic for another meetup. But if you followed along with the slides, when you're in Google Analytics version 4, those events that it tracks, there's one called click. So you can piggyback on click, and then you can click on another condition, and you can check for an HTML class or CSS identifier. So, and you can add that to your button. So maybe on your button, you've got an ID called click 1, click 2, click 3. Adding that condition in, you're adding that ID, HTML ID, I think it is. And then you're putting in your ID of that. And that, so piggybacking on click, an extra condition. So you can track that through Google Analytics 4 as well. And all that stuff you can add using Elementor. You can add custom classes and custom IDs to all your buttons. And so that's one way you could track those. And again, by adding it in as a conversion, then you can go into your reports and you can have a look and it'll come up with the clicks, and you get your user, your bounce rate, the number of clicks, and you can add value to it as well. So you can definitely do it that way.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
custom idea.
John asked, do you use Google Tag Manager? I do. Google Tag Manager is kind of a more advanced way to do that last segment, so conversions. It's a more advanced way of kind of really specifying parts of your website that you want to measure and grabbing data out of it. So I would probably use Google Tag Manager for that and not use GA4 for that, because it's easier for me to control with Tag Manager. But, you know, Google Analytics 4, because it's new, because it's fancy, I kind of thought I'd do it that way for those. Because Google Tag Manager is like a separate presentation in its own right for that. So yeah, I do use Google Tag Manager. I think it's very important for sales and marketing for that. Arturo says he's a newbie in web creation, so I really do not have a page to use analytics on. When I do, be sure to check back on this. Yep. If you've not got a website, of course, you can't track it. But even if you have a single website, even if you have a single page up there, Arturo, it's useful to connect to Google Analytics, just so you know who's there, who your target audience is coming from. For that, who's clicking on your page, because everyone has your target audience, everyone has a niche or an industry or people that they want to sell to. So if you're even tracking like a single page, if you see that most people are coming from somewhere that's not your target audience, you want to make sure you fix that. So just get that information flowing in, even if you've got like a single page. For that. Cool. Okay, everyone, if no one's got any other questions, I think I'm going to love you and leave you and go for some red wine.
You made it very easy, Will. I don't think it's a walk in the park, but everyone I think here will do their best to try to follow all your precious advice.
It's not easy. And Google Analytics, Tag Manager, their whole big world with sales and marketing. But hopefully this will give you just a little bit of baby steps into setting it up. And then you can explore that. There's heaps of tutorials online on YouTube, for goals, conversions, Google Tag Manager. So yeah, maybe I might do another presentation at some point about Google Tag Manager from a more marketing, digital marketing point of view.
But this is a great starting point. So everyone, just follow along.
yeah. Make sure Google Analytics, make sure you got Search Console. That's the two most important things. Thank
you, Will.
Well, thank you, Julia, for helping. Thank you, everyone, for taking your time to watch me live and on playback. And hopefully, guys, catch you next month talking about personalization your WordPress login using Elementor. So thank you, guys. Stay safe, take care, and see you guys next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.